Insemmilkom, Sinjuri, grazzi li qed issegwu il-programm illum. Fit-8 ta' Ġunju se jsiru l-elezzjonijiet tal-Parlament Ewropew u tal-Kunsilli Lokali. Illum se niltaqgħu ma' żewġ kandidati tal-Parlament Ewropew u għalhekk l-ewwel mistiedna tiegħi hija Dr. Louise Pulis. L-intervista sa ssir bil-lingwa Ingliża biex aħna nkunu nistgħu inleħqu il-messaġġ tagħna lil kulħadd. Thank you very much, Louise, for joining our program.
Always a pleasure meeting up with you.
How's your campaigning going?
It's going okay. I get mixed feelings from people. There are people so desensitized because the situation has become so toxic that they don't want to hear anything about politics. There are some who think the situation is beyond repair. So they just... they don't want anything to do as well. And there are those who are still hopeful. I always say, listen, a cup which is half empty is also half full. So it's a matter of perspective. If you want to build up courage, if you want to build up hope, you should see the half full, not the half empty. We're all the time bombarded with social media, with lots of disinformation and lots of scandals. And this is having a negative impact on politics. However, I cannot emphasize enough that politics emphasize every aspect of your life. If you're stuck in traffic, if you have sewage coming out in a bay, so you can swim, if you're not getting good services at departments with housing, or if you're being offered third country services at our national hospital. These are all symptoms of bad governance. Democracy is also under attack, and we have to protect it because democracy is very fragile. With the rise in far right, the rise in populism, we have a problem. And this is what I would like to work on, the protection of democracy and the protection of the rule of law.
What would your main priorities be should you be elected as an MEP?
My topmost priorities are three. First of all, why protect democracy? Why protect the rule of law? They are enshrined in the treaty of the European Union, but the rise in far right, the rise in populism, and the rise in dictatorial governments means that democracy is under attack, rule of law is under attack. And where there is an attack on democracy, there is a rise in injustice. And when there is injustice, there is always suffering of the people. It's always the people that suffer. So we need more mechanisms, more enforcement mechanisms against states which are not compliant. At the moment, there's only two sanctions, forfeiture of the right to vote and forfeiture of financing. But these are not enough. We need more enforcement mechanisms in order to keep countries compliant because we need to protect all European citizens.
Why, in your opinion, are people reluctant to vote? And what are the repercussions of that?
Educational programs like Erasmus, studying abroad, job opportunities abroad, these are all taken for granted. But if it weren't for the EU, these will not be available. So no, don't take things for granted. Even financing, which has helped a lot of road restructuring, it has helped the infrastructure, maintenance of the ports, regenerations. And the EU should not be seen as something distant. The EU has laws, and these laws have to become applicable in Malta. So it's important to be active and to be informed also about what the EU is doing, because regulations and directives will obviously affect our country.
You mentioned education and the Erasmus program. Can we focus on the younger generation? And this is the generation that have only known Malta as being part of the EU.
We are a very small island, and we tend to be very insular. So the fact that you go abroad and experience life abroad from a very young age, it helps you grow and open up your perspectives and point of view even about life itself.
You're a lawyer by profession. Can we perhaps talk about the event that somebody has a case in the local courts and needs to seek further redress in the European courts? What's the process like? Is it easy?
We have to distinguish between the European Court of Justice and the ECHR, the European Court on Human Rights, because the European Court on Human Rights is the European Council. It's not part of the EU. I mean, it's not under the treaties of the EU. So after you go through all the process locally, then you can apply to the European Court on Human Rights. That's for breach of fundamental human rights. The European Court of Justice, it's very different. Usually it's not there that individuals go to, but the ECHR. And we've got a lot of judgments against Malta. Fundamental human rights. So we don't have a very good track record. We've got also a lot of bad certificates, like the noisiest in Malta, the most obese children, the biggest admission rate for asthma and respiratory diseases. These are not good certificates.
I have to also mention syphilis.
Yes, sexually transmitted diseases as well. We're the European country with the biggest increase in emissions. These are all symptoms of bad governance. So anyone who wants change can actually help for that change by voting. People say, listen, it's my right. It's also a duty. It's a duty towards your country, towards yourself, and towards future generations. If we want to safeguard future generations, if we want to safeguard our youths, we need to vote. We need to change.
How do the European elections tie in with the local elections? They're happening at the same time.
The purpose of local councils was to delegate power from Parliament. Delegation of powers means it's not the minister who's always on the pedestal, but for each locality there are powers allocated to that local council, because the local council knows exactly the needs of that locality. What's happening is this government has centralized power again. It has seized powers from the local council and left them almost powerless. And now we have a problem, especially from the Labour side, of finding candidates, because they want to do something better for their locality. They want to help their locality, but the powers have been taken away from them. And that is not good. And centralizing power is not good, because each minister now has become a deity. We have a lot of false gods. We need to give them back their powers.
It's a long process.
Why should...
It's a long process to reverse something that's been done.
We need to give back the powers to the local councils, and we need to rebuild the systems that worked. Why should someone go begging for his rights? Not unjustified entitlement. We're talking about rights. Why should someone need to go begging to a minister, and the minister then says, listen, you have to vote for me, when these are basic rights? I mean, it happens especially with the most vulnerable. The most vulnerable, especially people with different abilities. According to statistics, are the most at risk of abuse, the most at risk of poverty, the most likely to be given inferior treatment, the most likely to be given or to reach adequate education. So we should protect them. The government is duty bound to help minimize the disadvantage of these people, not maximize it. These rights should be available. These people should not be begging for their rights, for medication, for housing, for jobs. These are rights. We started the last term, the last school term. There are 180 autistic children who have not yet gone to school this scholastic year. And education is a basic right. The government knows that these people are the most disadvantaged, and yet, instead of minimizing that disadvantage, he's maximizing it. If you're not giving these children their basic right to education, you're not going to help them grow and eventually help them find a job and be self-sufficient.
Louise Police was born in Attard in 1974. She is a lawyer by profession and holds a master's degree in human rights and democracy. Louise was brought up in the village of Zabbar. She is married and has 2 children. She has a genuine interest in the future of Malta, and for this reason, she decided to contest the European Parliament elections. Her interests lie in the protection of democracy and the rule of law, and she champions enforcement initiatives where they are required. She aims to raise awareness to protect vulnerable persons with laws that safeguard the rights of those with different abilities, especially those with psychological disabilities. Louise also wishes to raise awareness on mental health issues with laws that protect the rights of these individuals. The environment and sustainable development are close to her heart.
Thanks for listening. This is Louise Police. I'm one of the candidates for the upcoming MEP elections on behalf of the Nationalist Party. If you want to contact me, I'm always available. Please don't forget to vote for all the candidates on the list of the Nationalist Party. Thank you.
Signori, dik kienet intervista qasira bl-Ingliż ma' Dr. Louise Police li hija kandidata għall-elezzjoni tal-Parlament Ewropew. Pas-soltu tistgħu tibagħtu il-messaġġi tagħkom, il-kummenti fuq in-numru li jidher fuq l-iskrin, imma tistgħu tagħmlu kuntatt mal-kandidati dirett. Tistgħu issibu wkoll l-informazzjoni tagħhom fuq il-paġni tal-Facebook. Issa sa ngħaddu għall-intervista oħra ukoll bil-Ingliż biex inleħqu il-messaġġ għal dawk li jippreferu il-lingwa Ingliża u sa nintaqgħu ma' Norma Camilleri.